that you fight and there's battles that you don't fight. What does that look like? How do you approach that conversation with community or with yourself, with your team?
Great question. Interestingly, there's only been 48 bills introduced in our council this year, which isn't very much. So it was easy to pick up and fight for things. I've introduced a bunch of them, by the way, and this came from the community. So how do you choose? I mean, partly we're reactionary, right? Red Hill, right? Everybody's got, okay, we got to do something about that. But really, we should be proactive rather than reactionary and do things that we can see these problems coming down the line and we need to solve them before they happen. So there's both things that go on. Unfortunately, I see a lot of times that lawmakers, both on the state and county levels, are very reactionary, and you can't help but do it, right? Problems come up. The stream overflowed, and you need to go clean it and get money for more people to clean streams, right? But it comes from both myself, just seeing problems out in the community that I want to tackle, and it also comes from the community, people notifying us of what's out there and what needs to get done and what help they need to solve these problems.
Any other Keani.
I would jump in to add that I think like with the fuel tanks at Red Hill, like it was partly reactionary, but it was also proactive. That we finally have proof that it's contaminated the groundwater. But this isn't a battle that just happened today. Environmentalists and Native Hawaiians and community members at large have been saying that use the precautionary principle. Don't wait until the damage is done, because there's some damage that is irreversible. And so if the groundwater is now contaminated with fuel, with petroleum, like now we're not going to ever get to use that aquifer, and we know that water is life, and like what else is being affected. And so to answer your question, Becky, like as a Kanaka, being able to recognize and understand the different layers in which we operate, it's been quite the exercise to keep one foot in our Kanaka worldview that maintains an emphasis on balance and connectivity and collective ho'omana, like what Chair Waters is saying about staying grounded and connected to our people and the community. And then having the other foot in a worldview that the emphasis is on supremacy that maintains an imbalance of power and wealth, like what Ikaika was speaking to, hyper extraction for temporal individualistic gain, and disguising environmental destruction as a cost of doing business that we should all bear in the name of job creation. And I think, working and partnering with the community to have people that get it in decision-making positions will prevent this kind of irreparable harm to our environment and our people. After this storm, South Maui, you caught mean kind cracks. There's it's major flooding, major damage, mud everywhere. And, years ago, the community said, don't build there. It's a wetland. Don't build where the water naturally flows. But, those that were in decision-making power at the time didn't listen and allowed for, that imbalance in power to happen. And now we're suffering the consequences of these poor decision-making. So I think, like Chair Waters is saying, just, really staying grounded and having a support system to keep you accountable to the community's values and staying in alignment with that.
The thing I really liked about the legislative approach that Chair Waters was pushing for Red Hill is that it's about strengthening the role of the council, strengthening the role of the city and county of Honolulu, you know, empowering it to have authority over something that I think maybe some folks would prefer that we don't have the authority to deal with. And so I think that's really my ka'i, you know, and fundamentally it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how government needs to be strong right now. So I appreciate that. And, you know, the thing that I kept on thinking about over the last few days, and I'm hoping that with this, none of this comes to pass. I'm hoping that we really do follow through with the 60-day shutdown of Red Hill. But the thing that scared the hell out of me is a thought of if the contamination spreads and if it really does endanger the rest of the Halawa aquifer. And, you know, there's something like 400,000 people who would then be affected by it. And, you know, some percentage of those people are Hawaiian. A bunch aren't. But fundamentally, it means that the ability for our city, our community to thrive would be severely hindered. And that's probably minimizing the risk, you know, the words that I'm choosing. And, you know, the question that Pahonu in the chat was asking, which you referenced earlier, Becky, about can Hawaiians live in Hawaii? You know, it's a lot harder to live in Hawaii if the aquifer doesn't work, because we don't have water, right? And it's also hard if housing is super expensive like it is now, because we're not building enough affordable housing, and because we're not doing a good job of making sure that there's good jobs for everybody. So, I mean, the political context around whether or not our people can live here is I think the thing that keeps us all up at night. You know, can we actually build a really good society for our people? And so, you know, I'm glad, Keani, that you referenced the precautionary principle, and that you talked about how, you know, would be better if we solve these problems before they literally spilled, you know, and created catastrophe, because we do need to be as thoughtful and proactive as we can possibly be. Yeah.
I think water is like you said, Keani, that's life. Right? Without water, vai, right? You're rich. But after water, it comes down to housing, I think, right? I mean, just experiencing that in my own family, that it's $1 million to own a home in Honolulu and Maui too, I think. Like, how the heck are young people gonna afford to stay here at $1 million? I remember freaking out in the 80s when Japanese folks were coming in and buying up property with cash all over the place, thinking, wow, a home is $600,000. Who'd ever dream it's now $1 million? You know, Esther Keaina had a reso, which was really interesting, you know, like, why shouldn't the counties help build homes for Hawaiians, right? It's all of our kuleana, you know? Why couldn't we chip in some money for Department of Hawaiian Homes to build infrastructure? You know, why not? Why aren't we thinking like that? And it was really, really cool discussion that we had, that it's all of our kuleana. And she made a pretty interesting legal argument that I can't repeat today because it was kind of, you know, something that I don't want to get wrong, right? But it was really, really cool. Like, we should, on the city level, be building homes for Hawaiians. Why not?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to jump in. Oh, sorry, Ikaika.
No, please.
Okay, I'll just make it quick. You know, as counties, we are subdivisions of the state. So the obligation of the state extends to the counties. And so we recently just passed out an exemption for development in Maui County. We have what's called the Show Me the Water policy in Maui County, and that requires developers to seek out source, or at least point to where their water for the subdivision would come from. And unfortunately, at the time that legislation was passed, it didn't include an exemption for DHHL. And so recently passed that. So now DHHL development won't be held to that same standard that for-profit luxury developers are held to. And I think part of the point that you're getting to, and I absolutely agree with Chair Waters, is who are these houses going to, and what are their uses? Are they being used as, you know, investment properties? And that's something that got out of hand really quickly. And I'm thankful as I'm watching all the counties kind of regain control of that, because as investment, as these houses move out of long-term inventory and into, you know, short-term investment properties, you know, collectively that's not good for our long-term, because we live on islands. We have a finite amount of land. We have a finite amount of resources, natural resources, and then with all the waste that it creates. And so, you know, we're not going to build ourselves out of this housing crisis as we, you know, see on Oahu, and Maui County isn't either. So we need to be smarter about how these houses, how we're permitting these houses to be used, and who is benefiting from these housing developments. We need our local people to be benefiting. We need to, you know, assist DHHL in achieving its obligation to Native Hawaiians and returning kanaka iwi to our aina.
Yeah, I just wanted to, sorry for jumping in, Beck, Keani. I was just wanted to say that the quickest way for us to solve our housing crisis is to build homes with DHHL, to support DHHL. And then I also want to add to that by saying we also need to support OHA, because OHA's interests are, I think, we have, you know, particularly in Kaka'ako Makai, I think OHA should be able to build what it wants to build in Kaka'ako, because that's another way to solve the housing problem for Hawaiians and for the broader local community.
So every single home that's built by DHHL is an affordable.
That's right.
It's built at a level that is affordable for most of our Hawaii families. So I want to continue on this stream of, you know, what are some of these critical issues. I appreciate us going down this conversation of what are some of the things, what does it look like in our community to be able to provide hope that Hawaiians can have a future here. You know, for those that are wanting to get involved in those issues, who maybe haven't been as involved, or who are looking for different pathways to maybe engage in different ways than they have before, I want to talk a little bit about some of the different strategies for engagement. We've talked a little bit about the reasons to run for office. Before we close, I do want to come back and talk more about what it means to run for office and some of those challenges that folks have talked about to push beyond that. But I want to talk a little bit about different strategies. And so, you know, one way that we can create hope, I believe, for our community is to show avenues of change. So other than running for office, we talk a little bit about some of the other ways that folks can get engaged and get involved, and anyone just feel free to kind of jump in, whether it's a way that you yourself have been involved or that you've worked with others and other community organizations to get involved.
I'll start. I kind of want to point out what Jacob Aki said in the chat, that there's various other ways you can do it. I mean, I know we're going to talk about running for office, but you could also work for a council member or for a legislator, because I rely heavily on my staff. And you talked earlier about where some of these ideas come from staff, right? Staff helps me write these bills. And you get to know the other council members just working here in the Hale. And that to me is very, very powerful, you know, and I listen to my staff. So when they tell me, hey, this is a good issue, I wrote a bill, here it is, right? I mean, but boards and commissions are another perfect way to do it. And on the council, we have a say in that. So boards and commissions, neighborhood boards, community organizations, issue-related nonprofits. I mean, there's hundreds of ways to get involved.
Yourself, Chair, we're on a neighborhood board, right? And I believe Ikaika, you've been as well. Can we talk for just a moment about the neighborhood board process? You know, a couple of years ago, I think there were a number of great organizers who are working really hard to get Native Hawaiians running for neighborhood board seats. And I think as a result had probably record numbers of people running for neighborhood boards, period, but especially Native Hawaiians that's something unique to Oahu. Maybe if one of you don't mind just sharing a little bit for those joining us from across the Wai'aina, what are neighborhood boards, and how has that been an avenue?
You want to take this one, Ikaika?
No, that's okay. You can do it.
Well, so neighborhood boards, I think there's 31 of them on Oahu, and basically it's by neighborhood, right? So I have 7 in my district, 7. So I go to 7, try to go to all 7 every month, or have my staff go, but they're advisory to the council. So what I ask the neighborhood boards to do is, like, don't do it individually, because individual members have good ideas, but if you can convince your board to do a resolution and then transmit it to the council, we'll listen to that. And you know, it's interesting, the neighborhood boards are starting to work with each other and come up with resolutions that affect all of us. And man, that's really powerful when it comes to us on the council, that the neighborhood board is saying, hey, we're upset about this. You know, Ala Moana, when there was a push to redo that park, I mean, so many people came out to say, no, we don't want to redo Ala Moana. We like Ala Moana the way it is. Red Hill, I not to keep coming back to that, but all the neighborhood boards are taking a stand on this, and it's really, really powerful. As you mentioned, Becky, I ran back when I was in college, and it was such a really, really eye-opening experience. And all the governor has a representative, the mayor has a representative, each of your lawmakers, whether it be council or on the in the legislature, they come and present, and you can ask them questions, right? And it's on TV, and it's really, really a good tool.
Yeah. Wanted to add to what Chair Waters was saying. The only other 2 groups that we should include are churches. I'm the president of Faith Action for Community Equity, which is a coalition of progressive churches. And I think, you know, if folks can get involved in their churches and help to hopefully politicize in a, I mean, hopefully towards a more of a progressive agenda, that would be, I think, really useful. The other thing is unions. Unions are very powerful, and they, you know, they have the advantage of having kind of like a church. A lot of people, you know, that if mobilized and organized in a really thoughtful way, can be very effective.
I guess I'll jump in here. Maui County doesn't currently have neighborhood boards, but we love that. Well, a lot of us do, and because it brings, you know, it empowers the community. But like with any other, you know, system, it's only as powerful as the people make it, right? People have to, good community aligned people, you know, have to, you know, run to be part of the board. So then they need people to vote for them. And then we need people to, you know, engage and come out and testify and share what concerns and ideas that the community has. So broadly speaking, we're talking about organizing and mobilizing, and that's always key in any decision-making body. And I wanted to share my my recipe. So you know, and you know, konane for legislation, to me, you know, it's not a secret. You know, it's what has been effective in the past, and it continues to be effective today, and it's taking it back to basics. And the recipe that I use is 2 parts community stakeholdership, 1 part appropriate departments or agency collaboration, fold in and mix well, beat in your truth to power and stir until smooth, preheat with a call to action using traditional and social media, community meetings, and emails, bake at a committee meeting with testimony from experts, communities that are directly impacted, and community members at large. Deliberate until it's golden, seek common ground where possible, and pass out of the council with enough votes to override a potential veto. Frost by celebrating every community victory, and pair well with champagne.
You are awesome.
All right.
I love it.
You're going to have to drop that in chat. That's fabulous.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Don't tell the other side. Don't tell anybody. Keep it a secret recipe. Only share it with the 4 of us. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any in there, Keani, that you want to sort of hone in on, especially, you know, things that you've seen folks do successfully, especially, and anything that kind of stand out where they took certain steps, their ingredients, and were especially successful?
So, you know, like with this process, there's so many moving parts, so many components to it, and everyone's kuleana in this process is important, right? So as elected officials, it's important for us to make sure that we vet legislation so that it'll withstand opposition, right? Anticipate all the talking points that the opposition will use against your legislation, and really make sure that you're working with the community to anticipate any unforeseen impacts that could happen. So make sure to include as many voices as possible into the legislation that you're drafting. And then for us, our departments are wonderful. And so our council, as a council member, I'm able to work directly with our departments. And they're really on the ground, so they have a lot of great insight. And so I think, as the elected official, it's my kuleana to make sure that the legislation has the depth and the foresight to make it through the process. And then for the community, it's so important that the organizing and mobilizing. So we have, we don't have neighborhood boards, but we do have community associations. And I think, what I've seen and what some people do well, and perhaps we can learn a little better in Lahui is, you have, some people who are more, Chair Waters talked about how this process is, or this place is like foreign, and this process is kind of foreign, right? And so, people will come in and then they'll give themselves a title, and then suddenly they, their voice carries a little more weight. And so I've been encouraging our community members to, just get a hui together, give your hui a name. And then give yourself, that title, the founder of the hui to save this place, or whatever it is, and then suddenly your testimony has more impact, and that's one thing I would probably encourage our community to do. When you're organizing and mobilizing, go ahead and give your group a title, and then suddenly the elected officials will kind of listen to you a little more, because it seems as though you're representing more than just yourself. And I think that's one way to be more effective. And you always want to understand how to be most effective in passing legislation, and changing whatever rules that you need at whatever level you're at. So just really thinking through, collaborating, strategizing together has been the most effective.
But it would be nice if the group of 1 or 2 people who show up to say we're the president and vice presidents of the hui to da-da-da-da-da, if they actually had a hui, an actual group of people behind them. And that's been my push on our movement for a long time, which is that, go and create a hui, but then go and door knock and actually build a membership, build an actual organization. Because, what's the saying? The power in the spear isn't it's not in the sharpness of the tip, but in the length of it's an olelo no eau. I can't remember it in olelo. Sorry, but it's about the depth of the pololu, the actual shaft of the spear. We have to have that kind of depth in our community organizations in order for it to really pull off the act of showing up and saying, I'm with these guys.
Yeah, well, it just comes to mind, right? A couple of years ago, we passed Bill 40 dealing with the plastic and styrofoam ban, but you had Surf Rider Foundation, they came out in droves. 808 Cleanup, Sustainable Coastlines, all these groups that came out. And when the restaurants and everybody else came out and had a rally on the lawn at Honolulu Hale, these groups came out and got their members out, right? And they got their members to testify at the hearing. And when they did a rally, you know, the opposition did a rally, then these groups got together and did a rally. It was super powerful, you know, and from the council side, and we weren't sure where the votes were going to go. You know, it's hard with the Sunshine Law for us to actually sitting here count the votes. So I wasn't sure where this bill was going to pass or not. But when the community groups came out and started pushing, saying these are our beaches, these are our oceans, these are our streams and rivers, and we don't want plastic. And then you had these kids come out, man, and they were from schools. They signed this huge wall of petition. It was huge, literally like 30 feet long and 8 feet high. And it was full of signatures by young people saying, enough plastic. Your generation, my generation, you know, ruined it for them. Now it's time to clean it up. And these were all these groups that came out. To me, I mean, and I'm guaranteed we swung a couple council members over to get this very important bill passed. And it was community groups getting organized and actually coming out. I know Ikaika works for Local 5. Man, when Local 5 comes out wearing the same colored shirt at our hearings, it's powerful, man. And you put up like 30 people coming to testify, and everyone speaking from the heart and telling the council why this bill is important. To me, like we are able to move votes from no to a yes when stuff like that happens. So you cannot underestimate the power of getting involved and the power of being a part of a group, whether it be a non-profit or, like Keani said, make your own group. Go get your whole ohana in and your neighbors. Like, I've seen this happen where a street will organize, right? Because you got hikers parking in front of the driveway to go on hike. And man, the whole street comes and sees me about a topic. I like to show up to them though, but you got all the neighbors coming out upset about something. To me, that's very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, politics is about power. It's about who has more power, both in terms of the votes on the legislative body, but also in terms of the broader community that can push to get their people elected into office. And the thing that I love and Kalamai Keani is that you know, there's that saying, war is politics by other means, from Clausewitz, but there's the opposite is also true, that politics is war by other means. Politics is the way that we do, you know, combat nowadays. And when you're going out and door knocking and figuring out your volunteers, that's your army. You know, all of the same principles of warfare apply to the political world. It's just that the means of combat are different. It's about, you know, getting votes, and it's democratic and theoretically peaceful, but it has, you know, far-reaching implications. It can be very impactful to people in terms of their daily lives. Sorry to interrupt you, Keani.
No, I think that's awesome. And I'll add on to that, like, I'd be remiss if I didn't, you know, speak to existing armies, right? So, you know, we talked about, like, you know, just creating your own, but, you know, Prince Kuhio created the Hawaiian Civic Clubs, and that's an army that's already existing. And so that's another, you know, group of people who you can engage with that already have, like, resources, you know, like have members that are familiar with the political processes, that have access to experts that would, you know, be helpful when, you know, testifying or organizing other people. So, you know, accessing existing armies like Hawaiian Civic Clubs is another really good strategy.
You know, I'm wondering, there's been a lot of acknowledgement, you know, in chat and also earlier in this conversation about sometimes how hard it is to be engaged in the process. You know, for many ohana, they're having to take off work to join a meeting, coming from far away. You know, but there was also some discussion around the importance of showing up again. You know, Ikaika, you mentioned that you're the president of Faith. Faith Action has been a staunch advocate around housing on Oahu for many, many years, shows up consistently. You know, how do we acknowledge both within the political spaces that we're working within that maybe there needs to be changes made to better meet community where they are? And then how do we also arm community with the tools at the same to be able to sustain the long fight? Maybe since I said your name, Ikaika, I'm going to call on you for that one.
So I think a lot of it comes down to elections, because the election is how we is where, you know, all these different powers in our community get to kind of battle it out. Whoever wins, wins. And then from there, we hope that those elected officials will be good leaders, you know, and will honor the, you know, do the precautionary principle and listen to their constituents. And yeah, that's off the top of my head.
What I try to do is encourage communities, community groups, even individuals to actually come up with an idea for legislation. And we have a drafting agency here that we can work with them. And then I'll introduce it on their behalf and then ask them to organize people to come and testify. And then when it actually passes, people feel like empowered. They got a taste of what it was like to actually get a win. And it's infectious and it's fun, right? For people and from us on our side, to actually see people like get things done, you know, and it's not that hard to do, you know. You just have to have that willingness and the passion to do it. And it's, I guess what you're getting at, Becky, is people are busy, right? I mean, I walk door to door. You guys all know that. I wore out 3 pairs of shoes and I knock on someone's door and I say, "Hi, I'm Tommy Waters. Can we talk about how to make our community a better place?" And people are busy, you know, taking care of their kids, putting food on the table, worrying about paying their bills. And most people just say, "Sorry, Tommy, I don't have time." And I'm making it so easy. I'm at your door, right? I want to talk about how to do this. And people just don't have time for that, man. And that's to me is sad. But it comes back again to what Ikaika is saying too, is elect good people, right? Get to know, you know, and people are out there sign waving, come talk story. Get to know who the candidate is, right? And you know, if that's something or someone that you can believe in and they have good ideas and their heart is in the right place, then you can support them. Because most people don't have time to get involved. So I guess it comes back to passion, right, Becky? You got to really, really, really believe in this to carve out time to do it. And you know, the pandemic had a unintended result, which was great. Now we can have remote testifying, right? You don't have to come and put the quarters in the meter and wait for hours to testify. You can testify from your own living room or work desk via your computer, which is great. Yeah, my 2 cents.
And I'll add in my 2 cents real quick. You know, so what elected officials take on, it, you know, has like such a huge breadth of issues, and sometimes you know, it's too much for, you know, a community member who is, you know, juggling a full-time job, their children, their family, you know, whatever other things they're doing in the community. And so you know, as you know, both Ikaika and Chair Waters is saying, like you want to elect someone who knows the community and knows who to engage when specific legislation comes up that you know, that's, you know, community members, those set of community members would be able to contribute to and would want to contribute to. And so, you know, if you have water warriors. And so, you know, when it has, when legislation has something to do with water, you know, you tap into that group in the community. And then that way, you know, you don't want to overburden community members with every single issue. I mean, there are some community members that want to be involved with every issue possible. But one way of being a little more sustainable is, you know, tapping those resources when it's their expertise or their interest, and then, you know, having them engage during that time, and then, you know, releasing them back to you know, their busy life and schedule. So that's another way of doing it. And like, to Chair Waters, I'm going to have to say this just because it's, you know, us making it, this process, the legislative process, as easy to access, as user-friendly as possible, and to take the discussions to where the people are. And so, you know, one of the things that I pushed slowly, but, you know, surely throughout the pandemic was, you know, moving our meetings to, you know, online video conference, and then, you know, pushing us, you know, some maybe kicking and screaming to do it, but pushing us into social media, so live streaming, so that it does, you know, it is where people are, and it is more accessible for people. So,
you know, it occurs to me we should probably consider having hearings in the evening, where so that more people can participate after POW work.
You know, when I was in the legislature, I initially chaired the Higher Education Committee. And what I was able to do is take the committee out to various parts of the state, actually. We had hearings at each community college. So I took the whole committee out to Windward Community College, and we sat in their library as it rained, and we literally had drops dropping on our head, right? And we were able to convince the legislator that we need to build a new library on Windward Community College. We went out to Hawaii Community College, and same thing when I was Judge Chair. We actually took the committee out to Kauai when the Koloko Dam was a big issue, and people really appreciate that. And interestingly, today, you know, talking to staff, we're looking into taking the entire city council out to one of the schools in Red Hill and have a hearing on Bill 48 right there at the school, so that the people can come and testify in person and let us know what's going on. And the other thing, and stop me anytime, Becky, but because, you know, you get a politician on a roll, you cannot stop. But 3 minutes, okay.
That's a
less than that. I say we get 3 politicians on this. Keep going, Chair.
Not a politician.
But, you know, on the county level, there's only 9 of us. You go try to get something done across the street at the Capitol, you got to deal with 51 House members and 25 senators, 76 people. It's hard to get a bill passed. And over time, it takes time sometimes to get bills passed, right? And on the county level, 9. The majority is 5, right? How powerful is that, right? And we should start thinking about legislation at the county level that has far-reaching impact, and I really believe it can. And the county is, and it's home rule too, right? It's closer to the people. Coupling that with going out in the community and having hearings, I think could be really, really a cool thing.
You know, one of the ways that we haven't heard mentioned yet are boards and commissions. I think, Chair Waters, you talked about, you know, the opportunity to serve on staff of legislators, or perhaps in the executive branch as well. Boards and commissions obviously are important both at the county as well as the state level, as well as the federal level. Also, you know, any in particular that folks want to talk about, just kind of the importance of boards and commissions. And these are for those who maybe are not as these are volunteer positions usually that serve and provide decision-making authority, oftentimes though, and sometimes advisory, but not all, on different areas. I think at the state level, there's about 170, maybe more, boards and commissions. And then each county has different boards and commissions as well. Sorry, go ahead, Chair.
No, I was just going to say, like the Land Use Commission and the Planning Commission, it'd be great if we made a requirement that you have to have at least X amount of Native Hawaiians on these commissions, right? How cool would that be? The Planning Commission, man, is so powerful, right? I mean, you can really make an impact on certain commissions, right? Say you don't want a liquor store in your neighborhood, serve on the Liquor Commission. You can deny that permit, right? You know, you don't want a bar near your school, right? The Liquor Commission shuts that down. I mean, planning, you know, we're dealing with building housing for our people, right? The Planning Commission has a lot to say about that. Land Use Commission, where these houses are going to get built. So that's an excellent way. You know, being an elected official is not for everybody, or being a staffer, but certainly on these boards and commissions, you can do a lot of good.
Yeah. So I agree with Chair Waters', you know, idea to have like 3 Native Hawaiians on these really important decision-making boards and commissions. And in Maui County, we have 1 seat on the planning commissions that must be a Native Hawaiian expert. And then we have another seat that must have an environmental expert background. And so that has had, you know, tremendous value in deliberations and discussions, because for Maui County, our planning commissions approve, you know, hotel and resort projects, you know, with SMA, special management area, which is along the coastline. They also approve short-term rental permits. And so, you know, when we think about like over tourism, absolutely at the council level, you know, we can adjust and make changes there. But, you know, at the granular level, you know, per permit, it's at the planning commission. And those that often will put their name in are those that have financial interests. So we need more community members who don't have that kind of financial interest in approving these kinds of vacation rental permits and hotel and resort SMA, you know, major permits. And so that we're balancing, you know, our quality of life and, you know, the taxing of our resources better. And so, you know, like Becky is saying, there's so many unfilled seats at the state level board and commissions. You know, it's BLNR that was going through the TMT, you know, permit to allow for the TMT to be built on Mauna Kea. That wasn't the legislature. That was a board and commission. So there's so many important decisions that are made there, and you know, you don't have to run an election for these. You know, you submit your application, and you know, you try to get those that will, you know, decide on your approval to support you. You know, at the state level, you know, the governor, you know, chooses, nominates, and then the Senate approves. At the Maui Council level, I think Oahu and other councils too, the mayor nominates and then the council approves. And I recently championed a change to this because we haven't been able to see the number of applicants, or not the number, but who is applying, to make sure that it's not, you know, being politicized too much. And it kind of was, you know. And so something that we tried with our charter commission is having the council appoint 9 and the mayor appoint 2. And we've been told like it's the most balanced charter commission we've ever seen. And so that's another way, you know, like the executive body, you know, the mayor and the governor becomes like this gatekeeper. And, you know, we want to believe that, you know, the most qualified person is being nominated, and it's not political favors or just friends being nominated. So having this kind of like more balance has worked recently.
Yeah, I wonder if even like a totally transparent system where there's a website and people can just apply, and people can maybe say, I want to hide my name or don't want to hide my name, but there's a sense of transparency, because these roles are so important and they're also underappreciated. I'm really hoping that one of the things that comes out of this conversation is a program, a concerted effort to find the right people to be in those positions, because fundamentally we have a lot of really smart Hawaiians. There's Choke, right? Super wise, insightful, on the ground, in the academia, like really smart people. And, kind of like second to none, frankly. Some of the smartest people in Hawaii are Hawaiian. And for them to have roles in boards and commissions, I think would be incredibly beneficial for everybody in the state.
What comes to mind is the police commission recently. There's a lot of unrest in the community after a couple of those high publicity shootings, and a lot of people came to testify against the mayor's nominees, 3 of them actually. We went through 3 before we finally settled on Ann Botticelli. But it'd be great if we had more Hawaiians applying for this job, right? Our prisons are overrepresented by Hawaiians, right? And I think, and Becky, you can help me out here. There was a study recently that came out. I think, was it a study or an audit by the police department themselves?
It was a use of force study showing that use of force is disproportionately used against Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders.
Yeah, which is terrible. I mean, and it would be great to have more Hawaiians on the police commission who would be asking those very tough questions and direct questions. And, they have direct control over the hiring and firing of the chief. You can hold the chief of police foot to the fire, right? Being on the police commission. So I would highly encourage folks to get out there and look to see what's available and apply. And it can be as simple as sending in your resume to the mayor or the governor, and then calling all your friends to call the mayor's office or the governor's office to say, yeah, this person is great, I support them, right? Including calling your council member and ask us to write a letter to the mayor or the governor to appoint you to one of these boards or commissions. And we're happy to do it, super happy to do it. But yeah, there's so much good things that you can do by serving in that capacity.
And some of those seats, to your point, Chair, are actually filled by the legislative body, not by the executive.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Ikaika.
Part of the problem is that our local culture is that we don't like to make tantaran, right? We're often the very last person to say, yeah, I should go and do that job. And so it really helps if people who are committed to a better government period, if we could just go and like say, okay, you know what, uncle, auntie, doctor, so-and-so, please apply. We will help you, walk you through this process.
So we are closing in on our time. I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to share maybe 2 minutes of closing mana'o. We did have a couple questions that we weren't able, just kind of came in a little bit later, we weren't able to get to, and I just want to throw them out in case you want to talk about them in your closing. Ike, one is, what was one lesson you learned from the campaign trail that you would share with others who are either thinking about running for office or who are maybe supporting those running for office? What's one lesson? And secondly, for those of us in our community who are ourselves or our ohana feeling so disenfranchised and like our voices are not mattering, how do we keep the hope to stay engaged? How do we encourage our family to keep the hope to stay engaged, whether it's something as simple as voting or whether it's engaging in any of the ways that you folks have talked about today? Chair, can I come to you first?
Absolutely. So I'd like to start with what Keani was talking about, hope, right? We got to have hope and believe that we can make a difference in our community. You gotta believe that and have the passion. You know what we're fighting for, folks? We're fighting for Hawaii, right? I'm getting chicken skin thinking about that. And you're fighting for Hawaii. Fight all your might, right? Fight all your might. It's worth it, right? What we're fighting for. Yeah, and that's what I used to propel myself and wake up at 5 in the morning and stand in the dark and sine wave, or knocking on a stranger's door with a dog chasing me and almost biting me, right? I mean, because you believe that you can make a difference, right? Because you can. You really can. You just got to have that passion and believe and have hope. And that's what I think this panel brings to the table. And I know a lot of the folks who are on the chat, and I see the passion in you folks. And the reason why you're even here today is because you care, right? So that's so wonderful. So thank you, Becky, for inviting us and for moderating today. And guys, I'm available. I'll put my cell phone in the chat if anybody has any questions and wants to just talk story. I'm happy to talk story with you. And any candidate who wants to run, call me up. I'll give you some insights. It basically is hard work, right? Hard work, and just having that the feeling that you refuse to fail, right? Because there's so much at stake. We cannot fail. We cannot. It's Hawaii, right? Our kids, our keiki, our future, right? So please get involved. Please, please, please get involved one way or another, which I believe you all are, the fact that you're here. So aloha and thank you very, very much. And I'll leave my phone number in the chat, folks.
Mahalo.
Okay, and I absolutely echo, everything that Chair Waters shared. I think to reiterate, everyone has kuleana, right? It's different kuleana, but it's all important. And influencing policy is far more effective when people understand their role in the process. The process of policy making is a marathon, is not a sprint. Even though, like Ikaika was saying earlier, sometimes it needs to be a sprint, like in mitigating and planning for climate change. And it's important to not give up on the first try, to learn from your mistakes and shortfalls, and then come back even stronger and more effective. And like building up the next generation. I've had interns in my office. I plan to teach a class next fall at UH Maui, here, Molokai branch, here to try to build up our next generation, because everyone's important. Democracy only works the way it's supposed to when everyone's involved. And to what Chair Waters was sharing, like it takes a lot of work to run for office, but it's so critical. And when we look back on some of the races and how close it was, Uncle Walter Riddy's race, he only lost by 97 votes. Kim Koko Iwamoto's race, it's only 167 votes. And I think, Chair Waters, your race was even closer than that.
21 votes.
And so, when we say that every vote matters, every vote is important, we're not exaggerating. 21 votes in Chair Waters' race, it matters. It matters for you to vote. It matters for you to get engaged. And growing up, I used to think like, oh, elected officials are somehow more special or smarter. But we're not. We're not. We're just like you know, everyone else, and everyone that wants to have the capacity to run for office and to, you know, be that decision maker on behalf of our lahui, our community, and to lift us up. You know, like, we need you to be engaged. We need you to participate. We need you to vote. We need you to run for office. You know, our next generation needs you.
My two things real quick are, my lesson learned is o kaleo ke kanaka o ka kaleo ke akua, that the voice of the people is really the voice of God. And, you know, we've all door knocked. I think what we've heard when we go door to door is that these are the people that, you know, I love them. I love listening to what they have to say, some of the crazy things they have to say, and also the wonderful, like, amazing ideas that I've heard from the people in our community. The second thing is, please run for office, but also you can lead from wherever you're standing, you know, and if that means you're on this other side of the street with a sign, that's a good way of leading, because Bombay, the ideas on your sign might become the thing that, you know, is talked about in the Red Hill, you know, lawsuit or whatever, like those. So please just, you know, be active, be engaged, fight for our community. We really need people who will fight for our Aina. You know, it's absolutely critical. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Just this incredible panel. I feel so inspired right now. And just seeing the chat, people are clearly just really moved by all of your passion and all the work that you folks do. So mahalo to all of our panelists just for being here today, for being so honest, sharing such rich mana'o. Mahalo for being vulnerable, for sharing the barriers that you have faced. Also, though, and most importantly, I want to just mahalo you for the important work that you do in our community and the important things that you're doing to uplift next generation leaders. So appreciate you all very much. Mahalo also to all of the members of the Lahui for this conversation. I've been sort of periodically checking. Chair Waters knows that we like to count honks, or I like to count honks when we're sign waving, and so I also was trying to count the ticks that we had, how many people we had join us, and I think I saw 72 at one point. But we've had just such a great, robust conversation and people being with us today. So thank you all, and for participating in the chat. I think we had at least a couple dozen people that have engaged throughout the chat. So mahalo for just being present. Mahalo for being part of this conversation. Mahalo nui to the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, and congratulations on 20 years of creating space for our community to get together, to have these conversations, to purposefully, meaningfully advance our community. Up next in this breakout room in maybe 30 seconds, Kalamai, Nahana is giving us some corrected information. So up next in one of our breakout rooms is going to be a panel focusing on one of the most pressing issues facing Honolulu residents today. Our panelists have talked about it multiple times throughout the last hour and a half, and that is the Red Hill crisis. So with that, I'll be turning it over to our next panel's moderator, KHON's Gina Mangieri. But I believe that Mehana is encouraging us to have people go back to the sessions tab. So go ahead and look at the left side of your screen. And you should again see the sessions tab. And if you want to continue on for the Red Hill conversation, just go ahead and click Red Hill. Mahalo nui. Appreciate you all.
Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo Becky. Mahalo CNHA. Aloha Tommy. Aloha Ikaika.
Aloha folks. Aloha Keani. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Ahui ho.